chance at a place where we could play cards and also frivol with Louisiana State Lottery tickets. Would I play? Nay, said I. For to me cards have neither meaning nor continuity. But let's assume that I am going to play. How would you and your friends get to work? Would you play a straight game, or make me drunk? Or, well, the fact is, I'm a newspaper man, and I'd be much obliged if you'd let me know something about bunco steering. My blue-eyed friend erected himself into an obelisk of profanity. He cursed me by his gods, the right and left bower. He even cursed the very good cigars he had given me. But the storm over, he quieted down and explained. I apologized for causing him to waste an evening, and we spent a very pleasant time together. Inaccuracy, provincialism, and the too hasty rushing to conclusions were the rocks that he had split on. But he got his revenge when he said, "How would I play with you? From all the poppycock, Anglice bosh you talked about poker, I'd have played a straight game and skinned you. I wouldn't have taken the trouble to make you drunk. You never knew anything of the game. But how I was mistaken in going to work on you makes me sick." He glared at me as though I had done him an injury. To-day I know how it is that year after year, week after week, the bunco steerer, who is the confidence trick and card-sharper man of other climes, secures his prey. He clavers them over with flattery as a snake clavers the rabbit. The incident depressed me, because it showed that I had left the innocent East far behind and was come to a country where a man must look out for himself. The very hotels bristled with notices about keeping my door locked and depositing my valuables in a safe. The white man in a lump is bad. Weeping softly for Otoyo, little I knew then that my heart was to be torn afresh from my bosom, I fell asleep in the clanging hotel. Next morning I had entered upon the deferred inheritance. There are no princes in America, at least with crowns on their heads, but a generous-minded member of some royal family received me a letter of introduction. Ere the day closed I was a member of the two clubs, and booked for many engagements to dinner and party. Now, this prince, upon whose financial operations be continual increase, had no reason, nor had the others, his friends, to put themselves out for the sake of one Briton more or less. But he rested not until he had accomplished all in my behalf that a mother could think of for her debutante daughter. Do you know the Bohemian Club of San Francisco? They say its fame extends over the world. It was created, somewhat on the lines of the Savage, by men who wrote or drew things, and has blossomed into most unrepublican luxury. The ruler of the place is an owl standing upon a skull and crossbones, showing forth grimly the wisdom of the man of letters and the end of his hopes for immortality. The owl stands on the staircase, a statue 4 feet high, is carved in the woodwork, flutters on the frescoed ceiling, is stamped on the note paper, hangs on the walls. He is an ancient and honorable bird. Under his wing 'twas my privilege to meet with white men whose lives were not chained down to routine of toil, who wrote magazine articles instead of reading them hurriedly in the pauses of office work, who painted pictures instead of contenting themselves with cheap etchings picked up at another man's sale of effects. Mine were all the rights of social intercourse, craft by craft, that India, stony-hearted stepmother of collectors, has swindled us out of. Treading soft carpets and breathing the incense of superior cigars, I wandered from room to room studying the paintings in which the members of the club had caricatured themselves, their associates, and their aims. There was a slick French audacity about the workmanship of these men of toil unbending that went straight to the heart of the beholder, and yet it was not altogether French. A dry grimness of treatment, almost Dutch, marked the difference. The men painted as they spoke, with certainty. The club indulges in revelries which it calls jinks, high and low, at intervals, and each of these gatherings is faithfully portrayed in oils by hands that know their business. In this club were no amateurs spoiling canvas because they fancied they could handle oils without knowledge of shadows or anatomy, no gentlemen of leisure ruining the temper of publishers and an already ruined market with attempts to write, because everybody writes something these days. My hosts were working, or had worked for their daily bread with pen and or paint, and their talk for the most part was of the shop. Shoppy, that is to say. Delightful. They extended a large hand of welcome, and were as brethren, and I did homage to the owl and listened to their talk. An Indian club about Christmas time will yield, if properly worked, an abundant harvest of queer tales. But at a gathering of Americans from the uttermost ends of their own continent, the tales are larger, thicker, more spinous, and even more azure than any Indian variety. Tales of war I heard told by an ex-officer of the South over his evening drink to a colonel of the Northern Army, my introducer, who had served as a trooper in the Northern Horse, throwing in emendations from time to time. Tales of the law, which in this country is an amazingly elastic affair, followed from the lips of a judge. Forgive me for recording one tale that struck me as new. It may interest the up-country bar in India. Once upon a time there was Samuelson, a young lawyer who feared not God, neither regarded the bench. Name, age, and town of the man were given at great length. To him no case had ever come as a client, partly because he lived in a district where lynch law prevailed, and partly because the most desperate prisoner shrunk from entrusting himself to the mercies of a phenomenal stammerer. But in time there happened an aggravated murder, so bad indeed that by common consent the citizens decided, as a prelude to lynching, to give the real law a chance. They could, in fact, gamble around that murder. They met, the court in its shirt-sleeves, and against the raw square of the court-house window a temptingly suggestive branch of a tree fretted the sky. No one appeared for the prisoner, and, partly in jest, the court advised young Samuelson to take up the case. "The prisoner is undefended, Sam," said the court. "The square thing to do would be for you to take him aside and do the best you can for him." Court, jury, and witness then adjourned to the veranda, while Samuelson led his client aside to the court-house cells. An hour passed ere the lawyer returned alone. Mutely the audience questioned. "May it please the court," said Samuelson, "my client's case is a bad one. A damn bad one. You told me to do the best I could for him, Judge. So I've just given him your bay gelding and told him to light out for healthier climes. My professional opinion being he ought to be hanged quicker'n Hades if he dallied here. But by this time my client's about 15 mile out yonder somewheres. That was the best I could do for him. May it please the court." The young man, escaping punishment in lieu of the prisoner, made his fortune ere 5 years. Other voices followed with equally wondrous tales of riata throwing in Mexico and Arizona, of gambling at army posts in Texas, of newspaper wars waged in godless Chicago. I could not help being interested, but they were not pretty tricks. Of deaths sudden and violent in Montana and Dakota, of the loves of half-breed maidens in the South, and fantastic huntings for gold in mysterious Alaska. Above all, they told the story of the building of old San Francisco, when "the finest collection of humanity on God's earth, sir, started this town, and the water came up to the foot of Market Street." Very terrible were some of the tales, grimly humorous the others, and the men in broadcloth and fine linen who told them had played their parts in them. And now and again, when things got too bad, they would toll the city bell, and the vigilance committee turned out and hanged the suspicious characters. A man didn't begin to be suspected in those days till he'd committed at least one unprovoked murder, said a calm-eyed, portly old gentleman. I looked at the pictures around me, the noiseless, neat-uniformed waiter behind me, the oak-ribbed ceiling above, the velvet carpet beneath. It was hard to realize that even 20 years ago you could see a man hanged with great pomp. Later on I found reason to change my opinion. The tales gave me a headache and set me thinking. How in the world was it possible to take in even 1/1000th of this huge